So here's the thing. There exists a distinct difference between a gang doing robberies, murders, and racketeering in a city, and a well-connected, well-organized, internationally operating criminal syndicate like a Yakuza group. Now, a lot of people make the mistake of thinking this difference is simply the size and scale of operations, so it's understandable that a previous video of mine had people arguing in the comments that All Might ending virtually all crime made sense. It didn't, it doesn't, and it never will. So this video serves two purposes: to show why it doesn't make sense, and a greater purpose, to show what it looks like when an anime writer actually understands what organized crime really is. So this isn't exactly a video about My Hero Academia, but I will be making several references to it. Well, let's begin.
Yep, that's me. You're probably wondering how I ended up in this situation.
Supported by an ensemble cast, the two main protagonists of the anime Jormungand are Jonah, an orphan boy and child soldier turned mercenary, and Koko Hekmatyar, a young arms dealer and one of two heirs to H&C Logistic Incorporated, an international logistics and arms dealing company. Seeing this kind of narrative explored from the perspective of both a victim of international crime, violence, and war, as well as the perspective of a person who benefits from these things, allows us to explore one of the primary driving forces of both organized and regular crime. Crime as corporate power. My Hero Academia borrows heavily from Western superhero stories, but one thing it fails to adapt from its Western counterparts is this basic truth. Norman Osborn, Lex Luthor, Wilson Fisk, and Oswald Cobblepot are first and foremost businessmen who then use criminality to increase their wealth and power. My Hero, on the other hand, has a more juvenile approach. His villains and criminals are written in an evil for evil's sake kind of way, with either shallow motivations or simply being stereotypically broken people. The way Horikoshi writes the story creates the kind of us versus them rhetoric you would expect to see from politicians and police chiefs while talking about crime epidemics and degenerates overrunning cities and neighborhoods. Going back to Jormungand, we see a much less childish approach from the child main character. Jonah doesn't simply hate weapons. He hates the people and systems that enable them. All the people who design, manufacture, sell, and use weapons. As the story continues and he learns more and matures, Jonah comes to more fully understand the corporate nature of all of this. Corporations like HCLI have great incentive to both support criminal activities and to create criminal power structures themselves. Organized crime and corporations are often inextricably intertwined, whether as a result of profiting from illicit trade, supporting the criminal and extrajudicial activities of governments, breaking regulations and laws in pursuit of greater profits, benefiting from an escalating conflict, or controlling societal frameworks through force. This is why Koko wants to end the problem at its source: the weapons and communications technology that allow people like her to benefit from crime, violence, and war. I won't spoil it, but it goes deep into these nuances in a way that, while I don't completely agree with the conclusion, it is still enjoyable to watch. The point is that both Koko and Jonah recognize that they are caught in an endless cycle. A cycle that begins and ends with the profit margins of large and small companies who benefit from war, crime, poverty which leads to further crime, and ideological conflicts which lead back to war and crime, like a serpent devouring its own tail. However, Jormungand is for the most part grounded in reality, unlike My Hero Academia, which is a superhuman story with vague science fiction elements. In that case, let's talk about Dimension W. Set in the near future of 2072, the global energy crisis has been solved with the discovery of the titular Dimension W, a fourth dimensional axis proven to exist 40 years earlier. This has created a leap forward in technologies ranging from transportation to robotics and beyond, through devices called coils, which draw limitless energy from Dimension W. The anime compresses most of the manga into 12 episodes, so it can feel a little hectic, and it includes a few tropes I'm not a fan of, but beyond that, it not only has a compelling story, it also highlights the other half of the corporate power we mentioned earlier. Crime as corporate control. Control in the sense that New Tesla, the megacorporation who owns all Dimension W research and technology, strictly prohibits the use of unofficial coils. Control in the sense that New Tesla has established a global network of facilities, which are essentially giant coils, and now has a monopoly on the world's energy supply. Control in the sense that New Tesla has its own private security force and military branches, which have as much, if not more power and authority than regular security forces. Control in the sense that in the very first episode, it is revealed that New Tesla murdered the wife and child of the man who invented their technology, forcing him to go into hiding, and then they covered up the entire incident. It is quite reminiscent of what has happened to certain journalists, scientists, researchers, and whistleblowers in real life who have been killed or disappeared under mysterious circumstances. And it's interesting that the anime treats all these happenings as though they are normal, as though they have become a part of everyday life, because it makes sense. Corporations control our lives to an unprecedented degree, but they aren't penalized or punished nearly enough whenever they're caught engaging in criminal activities. On the contrary, capitalism tends to reward such behavior. You would think that this would be an easy direction for My Hero Academia to go in, the idea of corporations involved in crime. But oddly enough, we never actually see any corporations. You don't count. We never actually see any corporations at all in My Hero. I believe there's a deeper reason for that, but that's a discussion reserved for a video I'm making next year. Let's move on from corporations to corruption. Aka, 13 Territory Inspection Department, is a strange but compelling anime. For this one, I'll try my best not to spoil too much, but still, major spoilers ahead. Aka 13 takes place in a modern fictional world, on a strangely bird-shaped continent which is home to the Kingdom of Dowa. 200 years previous, the 13 territories were separate countries, until they were united by the king of a single country, Dowa. 100 years later, the other 12 territories rebelled, but the Dowa kingdom of that time period negotiated peace with them and allowed them to become autonomous territories under the kingdom's rule. To solidify this decision, a civilian-run administration organization was created to handle civil and societal issues across the kingdom, on an interterritorial scale. It would be called Aka. In modern times, Aka handles trade, commerce, resource distribution, protective services, and a host of other civil responsibilities, all while respecting the cultural distinctions and ways of life of each individual territory. To prevent such an integral system from being corrupted, checks and balances are needed, and that's where the titular 13 Territory Inspection Department comes in. A department tasked with inspecting the activities of Aka members in each territory. And the story begins with John Otis, the deputy chief of the inspection department, traveling to one of the department's branches in another territory to run an audit. The fact that he actually does find that a few Aka members are engaged in illicit activities gives the story a lot of weight. Even in a system as efficiently run as Aka, corruption can still exist. It's only after rumors of a possible coup begin to erupt, with some fingers pointing at Jean, while others point at members among Aka's 5 chief officers, that you begin to realize the nuances at play, and a long game of secrets and political conspiracies unfolds. This is crime as government corruption. And I chose Aka 13 as opposed to an anime showcasing a government abusing its citizens because this anime's approach is so unique. Ostensibly, one of the biggest motivations for a coup would be to help the people of the 13 territories. The next person in line for the throne of Dowa, Prince Schwan, intends to dissolve Aka, an act that not only are members of Aka obviously against, but would also be opposed by the citizens of the kingdom, since they see Aka as an essential organization for providing peace and stability. So we have 3 kinds of organized crime instigated by the government. We have the regular types of corruption that might happen within and between territories, where corrupt Aka officials would collaborate with criminal elements for their own gain. Then we have the actual coup itself, and then we have the secret behind the coup, which I will not reveal, but let's just say certain persons within Aka stand to gain enormous political and societal power if a coup is successful. And then there's the 4th kind of organized crime, Prince Schwan's plan to dissolve Aka, which comes in the form of a question. If a government takes actions which are technically legal, but those actions would hurt the citizens, then can such actions be considered criminal? This is a question which looms large over My Hero Academia, in the form of the Hero Public Safety Commission. But not only is the question never answered, the question is never even properly asked. In Western comics, whether it be Amanda Waller's Suicide Squad, or the many iterations of the Weapon X program, there is always a constant underlying theme which holds a kernel of truth in real life. The government cannot always be trusted. My Hero Academia fails to reach this level of nuance because there simply isn't a government to either trust or distrust. Horikoshi resolves the question by pretending it doesn't exist. At first, it's implied that Hawks kills Best Jeanist to gain entry into the League of Villains, but by the time you realize that Best Jeanist is still alive, you stop questioning the Commission's ethics, and then they quietly disappear from the story because all they were was set dressing. This entire narrative, from the moment where it is revealed that Hawks was ordered to infiltrate the League of Villains, right up until the point where Hawks murders Bobegawara, becomes a reflection not on the government and the moral quandaries of its decisions, but instead becomes a reflection of Hawks' morality, ignoring the institution for the sake of the individual, and losing enormous amounts of depth in the process. As it stands though, there is yet another way in which organized crime can be linked to government actions and initiatives. Crime as a social framework. There's a lot that can be said about the anime Be the Beginning. While Aka 13 has numerous elements of conspiracy and intrigue, Be the Beginning is defined at its core as a story of nested conspiracies. Like a Matryoshka doll. Set in the fictional European nation of Cremona, it primarily focuses on members of the Royal Investigation Service, who are following the case of a serial killer who has come to be known as B, as a result of the calling card he leaves at every crime scene. As the story progresses, we are plunged ever deeper into unfolding conspiracies. There are other people who are hunting after Killer B as well. People with vast resources and information beyond what anyone outside of governmental and state powers should possess. I am of course talking about Market Maker, and I'm trying to avoid too many spoilers, but this one is unavoidable. Market Maker is a secret organization created by the government and royalty of Cremona, which is tasked with engaging in various forms of criminality, murder, civil unrest, illegal trade, and the list goes on. Having ties to the nation's police and protective forces, and with agents hidden throughout and beyond the country, their job is to promote stability through fear. By creating just enough fear, unrest, and instability through criminal activity, the Crown and country want to use a state of constant tension to keep citizens in line and eliminate threats to the system in place. Urban legends like the existence of Market Maker can be found throughout our own world to various degrees. After all, the members of the RIS also believe it to be an urban legend until they find evidence proving its existence. So what about the times, even in the real world, where such things are proven true? Unlike the question I asked earlier, there is no ambiguity here. These are instances where what the government is doing is demonstrably criminal. But beyond the mere control I referenced before, these actions are meant to influence society on a wide scale and over a long period of time. There are interesting nuances surrounding the idea of criminality being employed as a necessary social framework. There are even some works of fiction which have explored the idea of criminal organizations being necessary to prevent chaotic and unpredictable crime from happening. However, this is one more area where My Hero is greatly lacking. Whether it be Hawks or Lady Nagant, the organization backing them fades into obscurity. The decisions made are focused solely on the morality of the individual carrying out the crime and why they think it's necessary. Or in Lady Nagant's case, why they became disillusioned with all of it. With Market Maker, we get to explore the personal ethos of various characters, but this does not overshadow what the organization's existence and activities mean for the country and society at large. With Hawks and Nagant, we get their ethos and literally nothing else. The funny thing is, each of the anime I directly referenced, Jormungand, Dimension W, Aka 13, and Be the Beginning, all of them, in one way or another, manage to highlight all the functions and nuances of organized crime which I have illustrated. Yes, even Aka 13, you should go watch it if you haven't. The fact that My Hero doesn't quite hit the mark in this aspect of its storytelling isn't simply because Horikoshi is a bad writer. While he does lack in several areas, I think there are underlying issues at play. Like I said, I'll be making a video next year exploring some of these concepts further, that is, as long as My Hero Academia comes to an end by that time. I'll also be making one additional video about My Hero before next year, so those 2 videos will be the very last I ever make about My Hero Academia. If you like my previous videos on that subject, or you would like to make several very long comments about how wrong I am on a single video, then like and subscribe, and I guess hit the bell if that's something you kids still do. I'll see you then.